Yes.
So
Beautiful.
it's funny because you were talking about, we're called to be missionaries.
Mhm.
And I have a very vivid memory as a kid when a missionary came to my church and shared she was a nurse and she was in a very dangerous area. And I prayed with all the earnestness that my 8-year-old heart could pray, please don't call me to be a missionary. I'm just being very honest about that. Please don't call me to be a missionary. And I say all that to say, I don't think we see ourselves as missionaries. I think we see ourselves as people who support missions and that those other people are missionaries. So this feels like a paradigm shift at step one.
Yes. You see that at that level, right, of foreign missions field, and but that's also an interorganizational issue as well.
Yeah,
Because when the pastor, I pastored for years, you pastored for years. The pastor wants his church to operate as missionaries. They want them to go out. They want them to bring people in. They want them to be talking to people, sharing their faith.
And I think the congregation thinks that's the pastor's job.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. Because then they say that, no, you're paid. You're the professional missionary, or you're the professional minister.
Yes.
But the reality is that priesthood of all believers says that we all are called to this work. We all are called to this work. And so it has to be, we have to actually speak to that. We have to talk about it. We have to do some type of shift.
Yeah.
And that's going to be evident in how we spend our budget. That's going to be evident in how we spend our time. One way to think about it is that if you have a pastor, I love the word. I love preaching. I love preparing scriptures, sermons. But if I'm spending 30, 40 hours a week on sermon prep, and then I wonder why I don't have enough time to actually model engaging with my neighbor. Then we shouldn't be too surprised by the result of just simply not having a lot of engagement from our congregation if we're not leading from that. What might it look like for us to say that, okay, I'm going to allow the biblical priorities to set the agenda for my schedule?
Yeah.
So that means that I am called as a pastor to the work of prayer and word. Okay, I'm called to that work. But Paul also tells Timothy to do the work of an evangelist. Do not neglect this work. So what might it mean for me to cut back on some of the time that I'm using on something that our church, I like to think, Pastor, that my church members are going to remember every single sermon, every single point that I make, because they're all equally important, okay? But it's not the case. What would it look like to say, okay, I'm going to spend 20 hours of prep, and I'm also going to spend about 10 hours, or whatever the case is, 5 hours in the field, modeling what it means to go in the harvest.
Yeah.
Welcome to the GC Collective podcast, brought to you by the California Southern Baptist Convention. From local missions to global impact, we explore the vision, passion, and heart behind our collective movement in California and around the world. Where better together isn't just a motto, it's how we maximize our impact in fulfilling the Great Commission.
Hello, California Southern Baptist family. Welcome back to the GC Collective podcast. I'm really excited. I get to be the center square today because we have two kind of special guests. First, I'm going to reintroduce our Missions Initiative team leader, Francis Chung. Welcome back, Francis.
Glad to be here, Sarah.
Yeah, and why don't you introduce our other guest?
Sure. I'm privileged to introduce Pastor James Westbrook. He's a church planner. He's also our Sin City missionary for the Bay Area.
Right.
Not only that, he was also in one of our CMO videos. If you
That's
recall.
exactly right. A California mission. You and your wife, Desiree.
My wife, yeah. So glad to be here with you guys. You guys are great.
Yeah, thanks for taking time to be with us.
So glad to be.
I have to confess that I knew that you were going to be in the building, and I kind of had a hunch we might be able to convince you to be on the podcast, that I wanted to dress cool. And so I put a leather jacket on and I straightened my hair and I have like this black eye makeup on because I just wanted to match the vibe.
That is hilarious. Well, you're pulling it off.
Okay, thank you.
This is good. That is hilarious. Bay Area, okay, I like it. It's a cool vibe, huh?
Yeah, that's right. Normally I've got curls and I'm in pink or something, but I was like, nope, not today.
We're going to go black today.
That's
cool factor. Okay.
Cool. So you are getting your doctorate Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I have this wonderful opportunity to pursue something I really enjoy, which is studies. And I'm pursuing an EDD and bridging to a PhD from a Southern Seminary. And so I have to defend coming up pretty soon here. I'm working through chapter 2, about to start chapter 3. So pray for me as I get ready for my
All of our pastors who have gone through it or are going through it or having PTSD right now.
Come on. I know.
A PhD from Southern, that's the real deal, man.
Yeah, well, looking forward to it. It's been a great experience. And so it's just simply build on my beautiful education at Gateway Seminary. And I get to do some teaching there. It's just been great.
Yeah, I love it. Well, good luck to you.
Thank you so much.
So thanks for being here. One of the things that we do every show is we celebrate something that's happening in the state. Now, I do feel like anytime I can get an opportunity to celebrate something that's happening in the North, like I jump on it. But the North is a question mark already, just the identity of the North. Because for some people, I think north of Fresno is Northern California. Yeah. Now you're Bay Area. So how do you identify as a Northerner, a Northern California?
When I'm in SoCal, I identify as a Northerner. Yeah. North Cal. Totally. Yeah. But the reality is that there's still 4 hours of state left beyond the north of the Bay Area. Yeah. And it's different. Yeah. These are different cultures, different people.
For sure.
And so the Bay Area is such a household identity, sports loving, their team, all that place that the Bay Area is just simply different. Yeah.
So do you think people in like Eureka, Wairika, do they claim you as theirs because you're Northern, or they wouldn't?
Not really. No.
Okay.
No.
Sorry, NorCal.
Yeah. They will say that they would probably look more at their towns in their region. No, that a regional or a town identity versus a regional identity. But it has a regional identity.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, all that to say, you guys just had a one day. I know SoCal had one as well, and we heard a little bit about it. It was on the same day, which I love so very much. Tell us a little bit about the NorCal one, or is it NorCal?
Well, the beauty is that we actually partnered with NorCal. And so Sacramento and north of Sacramento as well, with Chris Fincham and Jimmy Davison. And so we partnered with those guys and we had a great event. It was phenomenal. And to see this many churches, Southern Baptists, and also those that were interested in what we were doing from outside of our tribe, if you will, our denominational tribe, it was just phenomenal. Vance has a statement, Vance Pittman, president of SM Network, he has a statement where he says that, listen, prayer is not preparation for the work. Prayer is the work. Yeah. And you alluded to that as well, brother.
Francis is all about prayer.
One of our conversations, yes. And so we spent time praying and hearing great preaching and encouragement and breakouts that were practical in partnerships with our associations. And it was a phenomenal event. Yeah. And I believe that SoCal had the same result as well.
Great. And I love that you engaged all the regions up there.
Yes. Yeah. We're in this together. So we have to be,
I love that. I asked you a little bit about what you're going to be writing about. Tell us the title. And that might be a springboard into our conversation.
Yeah. Well, we're looking at key components of success of leaders, Christian leaders serving in global alpha regions. Global alpha region is a economic designation that recognizes the financial, fiscal status of cities in the world. And there's a spectrum there, but essentially when you have a city that is pretty high on this list, it comes with that which comes with it is influence, population boom, opportunities, jobs, culture shaping, and so forth. So it's important to really kind of look at what's going on in those cities, because whatever's going on in those cities is actually an indicator of what will be going on in most of the cities in the U.S. and in the world as time progresses.
Well, and I would think especially in California sooner than most.
Absolutely. You're talking about California it's the 5th largest GDP in the entire world. We have, I believe, somewhere up to 4 to 5 of those global alpha regions alone. So when you're looking at cities regions like Silicon Valley and San Francisco, when you're looking at LA and as well as San Diego, you're talking about a significant portion of the list of cities in terms in one state in So that's pretty significant.
Yeah. And so you're talking about leadership, right?
Yeah.
In that context, which I feel like the implications for church work abound.
Yes.
Yeah. And you've served, and I came up and saw your church when you were still doing, local church ministry before you got into that regional position. And your church was so very diverse. I mean, you were in the Bay Area, not San Francisco, though.
No, in Oakland.
Oakland, right. Yeah, seems like hard soil.
It was, yeah. Oakland, just, so people can kind of just get a sense of it, Oakland at the time was the most diverse city in the country.
Really?
Yes, and it's able to draw people from all over the world because it was less expensive at the time than San Francisco, which is the dominant city, the principal city in the region. So that's why we actually moved into Oakland. Where we were was in North Oakland, so we bordered South Berkeley. So we drew from Berkeley. We also were in North Oakland, which was a very diverse place. You had a large immigration of Eritreans and Ethiopians there. You also, this is the birthplace of the Black Panther movement as well. So right around the corner from where we were. So we had that militant vibe in Oakland as well. And so, and so that was interesting. And also West Oakland. So it was a joy and a challenge and all of it right there.
Wow, yeah. And actually, I don't think I've really stopped to think about it very much. But for instance, like we have a large Slavic network up there in the Bay Area. Was it the Bay Area or
in the Sacramento area?
Sacramento, that's
right.
That's considered north, that we would call it, about an hour east of us, but in the Bay as well.
And our largest Korean church, or one of our largest Korean churches that we're going to have convention at.
That's right. New Vision is in Milpitas.
That's right.
I don't know why I never stopped to think about
I'm pretty sure it was,
how diverse it is up there.
Great experience.
Well, think about the Chinese in San Francisco, for instance.
The history there.
History there is amazing.
Yes.
Yeah. One of the things I've really come to appreciate as I've been speaking with leaders in the last couple of years is that the church planter is really leading the way in how do we change the methods to reach our community. Yeah. Obviously, church doesn't change, the Bible doesn't change, the gospel doesn't change. But in California, we've really had to become pioneers in how church functions, what works, what's not working. And I've learned that the planters, they're kind of thrust into that. And I feel like a lot of our sort of established leaders could learn a great deal from how our planters have had to be adaptable.
Yeah.
I was thinking about, for instance, we have that church here in Fresno. It started as a Hispanic congregation, but over the generation, a Hmong community has developed around the church. Right. And so they've had to change, even a little bit of their identity. And I know identity church is becoming kind of a conversation piece right now. Is that something that we're seeing that I know like the urban cities, but even should our rural churches be expecting that within a generation?
Yeah, I believe so. The greatest indicator of human migration patterns for the foreseeable future is going to be through globalization. Yeah. Globalization is a reality that crashes in on every context. So it's not just our cities. Here's the thing. Here's the reality. The reality is that cities simply widen in their circumference, if you will. They go further and further and further out, and so that which used to be suburban is now urban. Which used to be rural is now city. So that's that factor that you have the center this spreading out further. But in terms of the rural places, those are going to be places that are going to continue to be attractive to people that's coming from around the world if it's more affordable, if it fits something that's more that's closer to how they grew up, agricultural, agrarian. So no one can escape it. So if you're sitting here saying that this is not a reality for me, you could probably say that, I've been noticing some things in the last 5 years that says that this is certainly a reality for me.
Yeah. And so culture is a huge part of that, right?
It is. It's interesting. I want to just go back on something that you just said. You have the pastors that have been there, let's just say 15, 20 years. Okay. Those are pastors. I would say that we learn from each other as church planners, and those pastors that have been there. We learn longevity from those pastors. We learn other just staying type of methodology, that allows a person to stay in a place, Now, the thing is that with church planners, the reason why we're so flexible and adaptable is because when you're thrust into the harvest, you're having to actually missiologically focus on who's there. If you're not necessarily going with the homogeneous principle, someone, they can write an email to me about it if you think that I'm speaking too hard about it. But if you're simply saying that I'm going to reach who's there, you have to be adaptable. So there are things that we can certainly learn from each other. But yeah, that's a huge part of it, because the reality is for the church planter in 10 years, his context would change dramatically. Their context would change dramatically. And they're now having to move from, hey, how do I sustain what I started, to now kind of shaking up ground again to say that how do I re-engage the new context that's here? So it's a never,
James, that's so interesting. Can you give us some specifics? Like, give us some examples in terms of how the church planter is different from the pastor that's been part of a legacy church, for instance.
Yeah. So I would say that the church planter, if you look at Acts chapter 13, 14, the way that we kind of champion in Sin Network is you go first and you engage a city. First, you have to engage the city. Okay, so you're doing missional work. You're going to the harvest. We're not talking about just simply swapping sheep. We know we've talked about that for decades now. We have to stop doing that. As if that's really the win. We're talking about going into the harvest. So we first engage cities. It's what you see Paul and Barnabas doing. They go from town to town, engaging the harvest, engaging the mission field. From that, you begin to disciple. Okay, you begin to disciple. And after that, then you plant churches from that. Okay, so if the church planter is just focused on that versus simply just starting a new church, a new service, right?
Yeah.
If they're focused on kind of what we're talking about with the church planting pipeline, what we're kind of focused on, our strategy, then they're just simply, they have to be adaptable and think missiologically if they're going to be successful, and if they're going to follow that trajectory that we see in Acts chapter 13 through 14. Whereas when typically in any business or any non-for-profit or anything that you do successfully, what do you do when you find success? You just simply maintain it. That's right? You just continue to do the same thing. And how do we build upon it? It's harder the longer you're into something and experiencing success. It's just simply harder to think at that entrepreneurial stage, of re-engaging, because you already have a clientele base. You already have the folks that trust you. You have a household name. But what we're noticing, and what our churches are noticing, is that as that clientele base is shrinking or getting older, as the churches are shrinking because the environment around them is changing, they're having to go back to a stage that they hadn't been in for a while. And church planners in 10 years, they have to do the same exact thing. It's
interesting because you said they go into the city first.
Yeah.
Then they start discipleship, and then they build the church.
That's right.
Why does that feel out of order?
Because it's not the way that we do it. Typically speaking, this is not, I don't want to over-criticize movements and things like that. Every movement that has happened under the evangelical system has had great use. For us, and we've learned a lot from them. Church growth movement, we've learned a lot from that. I'm not a big fan of the homogeneous unit principle, but I understand some of its effectiveness.
Yeah.
However, we have made ourselves too long content and satisfied with starting church services. So when we think about planting a church, what we're effectively saying is, I want to start a great Sunday experience.
Right.
And that's not what church planting is in the scriptures. What church planting is in the scriptures, when we see it from the first missionary trips, is actually engaging the mission field. And out of what happens from people confessing, giving their lives to the Lord, those that are far from the Lord, as a result of that, then you start a church.
Yeah.
And you see Paul. Paul is like, hey, after he's planting these churches, he's going back through and he's appointing elders. And you get this sense that that this is fresh, it is life, and is coming directly from the harvest.
Yeah.
versus just simply sheep swapping.
Yeah. And so here we are. My mind is like firing on all cylinders right now. I have all these thoughts. Because I know that a lot of our pastors sometimes think, my church is barely struggling to hang on. I'm not in, this conversation is not for me because I can't plant a church. But then I think about the 10-year vision and how the very first thing we're doing is praying. We started praying for a year, and now the very first thing we're going to do is pray for neighborhoods from the map.
Yes.
And I was like, this is all lining up, right?
It's incredible because what James just mentioned is what a missionary does overseas.
Yes.
Right? And we're going back to what we really need to do, right? It's just not gathering and let's have a building, but it's let's evangelize. Let's share the gospel. And then
going to the nations.
It's going exactly.
But right here.
That's right.
Over there.
That's right. It's no longer come and see. It's go and tell.
That's right.
Which is incredible.
That's right. And that's the shift. Here's the beauty of that is that the missions field has been doing that for so long. Mm-hmm. And there's a difference. It may have something to do with ministering in a context of abundance versus ministering in a context where you have to earn your right to even build relationships, to preach the gospel. It comes at great risk. There's so much there. I just came back from one of our global vision trips, partnership with IMB and with Sin Network, and just came back literally last week from Thailand. And in Thailand, to be Thai is to be Buddhist. That is, and so to separate yourself from that and to turn to a lordship salvation into Christ, that is literally giving up everything, and it fits more of the context that we see in the first century with Jesus. So I think that when the come and see, we've relied on that for so long. If you build a great experience, if you promote it enough. And I will say that that's still going to be effective. And I'm not against, I think that there's a place for attractional things like that. So don't hear me saying that. Yeah. However, if we are not willing to see ourselves as pastors and church planters, which they're pastors as well, but if we're not willing to see ourselves as missionaries to our context, and do some of the things and follow some of the same patterns, different contexts, but engaging the harvest, go and tell, then we're going to find ourselves constantly trying to build something and grow something that's shrinking.
Totally.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what you just mentioned is so incredible, right? Because we're telling people if to come and see is you're going to adapt and learn our language, the church's culture, right? The church's lingo, as opposed to missionaries, we're going to learn your language, your culture, and there we proclaim the gospel in a way that you understand it. Wow. Now we're telling them, hey, listen to how we do it, and perhaps you'll get it. So that's fascinating. I love that.
Which is an inadvertent, I've never said this publicly, but it is an inadvertent, I think, fallout of the homogeneous unit principle, okay? Because the homogeneous unit principle was all about lowering those obstacles that unbelievers will have to cross in order to find Jesus. Oh. That's what it was about. Mm-hmm. And so for them, the way to do that is to just simply try to reach people that is closer to you on the cultural spectrum.
Yeah.
It's less that they have to overcome.
Yeah.
Sounds good, sounds noble. I think it's good intentions. However, I do disagree with the conclusion, because what you end up having is you say that basically you're still telling them to come and see. We relate to you, come into this place. But what you don't realize, though, is that the cultures are changing so rapidly now.
Right. Yes.
That you're still, and this is not just for homogeneous unit principle guys, folks, but you're telling them to come and learn a new language without even knowing it. That's because you believe that you're speaking the same language, and you're not. You're not. It's changing too rapidly because of globalization.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So I know we've kind of been talking around it a little bit. Where, for me personally, I'm in a small group that is very different from me personally. And I love everything about it because I don't want to be just with people just like me. I can't grow as well without some older people, without some seasoning, all of these other things. And so this idea of this kind of preservation of one style, I don't know what the word would be. But I feel like we do see that. I mean, there are very large Chinese churches and these other ethnics. I mean, I'm trying to dance around what can be a sensitive issue to some people. But it does seem odd to me. What are we trying to accomplish in the end?
Yeah, that's great.
I think there's a place, James, don't you think? Wouldn't you say that for language churches, right? If their heart language is Chinese, for instance, the only way you're really going to reach them is if you speak the same heart language. And
that's
so
right.
you're going to have a homogeneous church that's Chinese, for instance.
Yes.
And I don't think that's what you're talking about when you're saying, hey, we shouldn't have churches like that.
Yeah.
Because that's the only way that they would reach those
right.
who speak Chinese, for instance.
That's right. So when I look at the Great Commission, you look at the language Pantai Tai Ethne. These are particular people groups. It's a very intentional word. Word is used there to say reach the people groups of the world. And we know that you can have a country that has many people cluster groups in that particular country. And so it's not enough just to try to reach a country. You have to reach the particular people groups of that country. Very intentional, beautiful words there in the Great Commission. And so when it comes to language, is a huge part of that. Linguistics is a huge, significant part of that if we're going to effectively and faithfully carry out the Great Commission. So if it's a language issue for me, I say that you should do it. Most of what we're talking about has more to do with a cultural issue. Language can overlap with culture, sure, it can. However, when you're talking about the same language and different cultures, I would say that, and this is what I believe essentially the ethos of Scripture is that same way with Paul. Paul engaged Jews. Paul, after engaging the Jews, he moved to the broader culture of the place with the Gentiles. Which, Gentiles, literally, that's the peoples of the world. That's the ethne. Okay. And his expectation that whoever was becoming a Christian from the harvest of the Jews, they would share the same congregation of those who were becoming Christian from the Gentile. That would have been his expectation in Colossae and Ephesus and Corinth, all these different places, right? So that's what I would say. Now, I do believe that there are certain circumstances and particular cultural contexts across the world, including America, where a culture could be so particular, their cultural artifacts, those things that represent what they are in symbolism, their shared history, there is a language that is established and formed over centuries that actually becomes for me a cultural language in and of itself. Okay. So when I look at my family, when they think about church, they're likely going to receive in a very deep way at a heart language level from the traditional African American church, even though I was originally raised Muslim. And so after we left the Nation of Islam, after left Islam, we went and ventured into some Christian churches, but there was this shared cultural language, even amongst the Muslims and the Christians, that was able to connect with my mother and us and say, okay, they understand us enough to. So I say all that to say that I do believe that there are circumstances throughout the world where you're going to say that, okay, this is so thick culturally that it's like a language. Now, with that said, if what we're doing in our communities is saying, yes, you and not you, I just don't see a precedent in Scripture for that. I don't. And so I had people from different backgrounds. They questioned what we were doing. and having a church that was had no particular majority. This is just simply descriptive, not prescriptive. We had no majority. We had people represented from all over the world. And they spoke different languages, but they all could speak the language of commerce in this country, which would be English. And so I just simply said, Lord, can we just praying that we can reach the context that you called us to.
Yeah.
And we're not going to say no to anyone.
Yeah.
Because I don't think you say no to anyone.
Oh.
And so whatever that turned out to be, that's what our church became.
Well, and I'm wondering then about, if we're saying, okay, well, language, that's clearly, some people that's their literal language. But does that continue on from generation to generation? Because I feel like right even in that church, the second generation is English speaking.
Wow, that's a loaded question.
Oh,
it really is, because that's the struggle for any ethnic church, right? You have the immigrants, the first generation who come. Then afterwards, the subsequent generations, you have those who still speak or understand the mother tongue.
Yeah.
But, the next generation after that, third, fourth, they're going to speak the tongue of where they moved to, right?
Yeah.
So for us, it's going to be English.
Yeah.
And so that's always going to be a struggle. The question is, how do you adapt to that, right?
Yeah.
How do you minister in that context? And I think the question is, really, we don't want to be exclusive. When you're exclusive, that is really not biblical.
Yeah.
It's how do we adapt to the context of reaching that culture for Christ, that ethnic group for Christ, whether it's the immigrant, first, second, third, subsequent generations.
And also I was hearing from a pastor in the deep north who's trying to reach the tribal community.
Yes.
So you're talking about those things that bind us to our culture.
Yes.
He finds that can be a stunt. He's trying to find the line between at what point is it heresy, tribal dancing or the garb or these things that they become attached to their identity, or it is part of their identity, and then it's not biblical.
Yeah. Missiologists have thought about this for a long time, and so they look at it through a spectrum of contextualization: C1, C2, C3, C4, I've seen the vast majority of missiologists that I've spoken to are comfortable. Even IMB is comfortable with this middle range of saying that, listen, while we will not say things like, I'm a Muslim, right? This is like C4, C5, something like that. I'm a Muslim and but I'm a Christian privately, so I won't say anything. Okay, that's the extreme level of contextualization. Like this is how I'm contextualizing. Versus C1 in a context like that, where you say that, no, I'm so different culturally. I reject everything culturally from my past, where they just are simply not effective as missiologists in that context. Somewhere in the middle says that, listen, there are some things that are simply redeemable. That's cultural. Cultures. Let me remind us that cultures are likely they live on in eternity. Now, that sounds odd, but when you think about it, when you see the nation standing before the Lamb of God, you look at Revelation 7, right? You see them standing for those are cultures.
Yeah,
they are.
They didn't shed all that off.
Yes.
They're worshiping holy, holy, holy.
In that cultural identity.
In that cultural, and that's right. So they're not shedding. So somewhere in between, you will be able to say that, hey, there are redeemable factors about my culture, and then there are ways in which my faith actually says that I'm actually against this particular practice. I can't do this anymore. Yeah. It's somewhere in the middle. It's a balance, I think.
Yeah. So I'm thinking about when we were on our listening sessions a year ago, there were some of our kind of legacy pastors who were, their churches are dwindling and they're saying we need to go back. They're hearkening back to sort of the golden days of Sunday school and training union and these things. And in my heart, I'm thinking, wow, you should talk to a church planter and see, what they would think. What kind of advice do we want to give to pastors right now who maybe need to just go to the coffee house next door and just look and see who's in their community? Yes. What are some practical steps that they could be doing?
Yes. A great resource for that in helping to, so let me just start with a statement. I think that all of us as ministers of the gospel, male and female, we have to begin to think like what we are called to be. We are missionaries. That's the Great Commission. That's Jesus' last words, Acts 1:8. You will be my witnesses. That word is martyr, by the way, something there, very, very important. But that's the root word for martyrs is witness. But you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and to the outermost parts, which part of my research, I'll just give a little sample right now.
Yeah.
The scriptures, I think, are oriented to globalization anyway. Right? So as this is unfolding in history, right before us, it's an indicator of what scriptures already said, that we must go to the ends of the world to preach the gospel. And so we shouldn't fight against it too much.
Right.
Globalization. I get our small town feel. We don't want that to change too much. I don't want my town to change too much either. But it's an opportunity for the gospel. Okay. All right. So I digress. I would say that we're called to be missionaries. That's part of our identity. God is a missionary God. It filters everything that we do as we are dealing with our neighbor, love of neighbor. So do things that's going to help you think like a missionary. And I would say this to the church planner who's just simply content with starting a church service. Yeah. And I would say this to the pastor who's been there for a long time, set in their ways, and then they're looking for fresh eyes. Yeah. And a great resource for that is this book, Tradecraft. Tradecraft is an excellent resource that allows you to just begin to think like a missionary, see with new eyes, map your context, and it gives you different language that it helps you to really understand. Okay, I'm looking at this with fresh lens. So anyway, that's something I would say.
I would add to that. If you look at IMB's core missionary task, everything is abiding in Christ, right? It's prayer.
Yes.
And so I'm going back to what you asked earlier about, hey, we're praying for communities that are lost, right?
Yeah, yeah.
We find the communities where there is no witness for Christ. Mm-hmm. And how do we don't do things first. We cry out to God desperately, praying, Lord, what do I need to do? Sure. Lord, who's the person of peace who's there that we can anchor into that community, right? Yes. So you pray for that community, you abide in Christ. And that's what I would tell the pastor, right? You not go back to the old days. Yeah. Let's go back to what you need to do, which is turn to the Lord. Yeah. Yes. And I think that's what we're doing with Pete unveiling, right? The new vision. Right. We're going to pray for those 1,030 communities without a Southern Baptist witness in California. And that's going back to becoming missional. Yeah.
Yes.
Wow. What else? Yeah. I did hear you talk about the budget. That was very practical.
Yeah. This is not original to me. I forget the author that wrote this. But he said that which part, in this exercise, which part of your missions budget or what percentage of this pie is your missions budget? And they say, well, this part, 20% of it, And essentially his premise is that that's incorrect. The whole pie is a part of the missions budget. And you're just simply looking at it through whether it be children's ministry or however you allocate your funds there. That all of it's about mission. Yeah. God is a God of mission. And the church has one mission, which belongs to the mission of God, and that is to make disciples of all nations. So anyway, that's what I would say about that.
Yeah. And it's, you've been saying since day one, and I'm sure it predates you even, the world is coming to California. And so this idea that missions is somebody else's job is it's such a fallacy.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
Any other practical advice that we can give pastors right now who are starting to think, I may have slipped into, some kind of complacency over here?
Yes. I think a low-hanging fruit way to do this is one, in the same way, if we remember what it felt like, if we ever did this, supporting missionaries. Yeah. You have the picture in the hallway, right? You on a bulletin. Yeah. You want to, and why are you doing that? Why do you, when those missionaries are back home on furlough and they're raising support, you want them to tell stories to the church? Why are you doing that? Because you want to fire your people up. You want to see Christ formed in these people through what they're seeing done on the field. I would say in the same way, we need one another, church planners and well-established churches. I think a practical way that churches can do this is to fire up that engine again, re-engaging through a missiological lens, life again, is to connect with a church planner, connect with a local church planner. Look at what it means. It might mean to support a local church planner, and I think there's a pipeline for that. There's a spectrum on that, but engaging a church planner What are you doing? What are you thinking? And the church planter will tell you that there are things that you have done. You've forgotten more than I know, right? Because you've been at this for a long time. That church planter is going to need you as well to give what you have. But that church planter is probably more poised to engage missiologically in the context. Talk with them, bring them before your people, let them preach to your congregation about what they're doing, excite people, and it's contagious. It excites you as well.
Yeah. That's really great. Well, thanks so much. I feel like we could do a part 2 and a part 3 probably. Man, I feel like we barely scratched the surface, right?
Very true.
So just to sort of boil it down, globalization is affecting our churches in a significant way. And our pastors need to be not only just aware of that fact, but understand that the Bible answered that question a long time ago.
That's right.
It called us to be missionaries.
That's right.
Oh, wow. I've been a Christian like almost my whole life.
Amen.
Well, I'm so grateful for you and the way that you're kind of engaging in the work here in California. Thanks for being here. But before we close, we end with a funny story.
Always.
We've never missed one episode, and we like to put our guest in the hot seat.
Okay. I'll give you 2 quick ones. First, one quick one. One of my favorite shows. Don't judge me too much. This is vulnerability, which is more than transparency. So don't judge me too much. One of my favorite shows has been The Office. Okay,
excellent.
And several members are from St. Louis, my hometown. I was on my way out the country. I got on a plane in LAX, and I saw someone on the plane. And I looked, and while the people were putting their things up in the overhead compartments, I stopped and looked at them and said, "I recognize you from somewhere." Yeah. Okay. And she said, "My name is Phyllis." and this shy voice, Phyllis. I said, "Phyllis." I said, "Where do I know you from?" I was pretty tired on this trip. It was my favorite show, and she says, "From The Office."
Not Vance Refrigeration's Phyllis.
I said, "The Office." I said, "I used to work with you." This is no lie. I said, "I worked with you," and she chuckled. She put her head down. And for anybody who don't know who she is, you can also look at Inside Out, the show. She's the blue one.
Yes, she is.
The
she voices the blue character.
So she has that demeanor. She's very shy. She's fun. And she says, "No, the show The Office." I said, "Wait a minute, Phyllis, that's her real name, and that's her name on the show."
It is her real name.
I said, "You're from St. That's my favorite show. You don't believe me. I know you don't." And so that was
I'm tired, I promise.
I'm just tired. That's a funny one. The last one I will say is that last fall, I go to this great, beautiful trip with some church planners and some folk that we brought in to help us understand nature just a little bit more. And we were in Yosemite and had a great time there. And at the last night, the last day, when we were leaving out, I told everyone so arrogantly that I can find my way back. I can find my way back down. I'll catch up with you all. And someone yelled out something from our staff, Zach. He said, "James, don't forget to make a left." And I don't know what he said. I just turned back and said, "Zach, I know what I'm doing." And then 7 hours later, I thank God I had water and food. It was horrible.
7 hours.
I was hiking for 7 hours off that mountain, 5 hours off the mountain, and then 2 more hours of walking around. Because when I finally got off the mountain, I did not recognize where I was, so I hiked 2 more hours, and I was hurt. I couldn't do anything else. I did something that. I don't know. This is probably something that most Americans wouldn't do, but African Americans from the inner city certainly wouldn't do. St. Louis, okay? I said, "There's only one option I have here," and Mama told me not to ever do this. I said, "I don't know how this works," and I put my thumb out. I hitchhiked, and I said, "I don't know what people are going to think. I don't know. I'm pretty big. I have this big knife on here. I don't know how many brothers are in this area right here." And so, but literally like 30 seconds later, people pulled over. Okay, here's the punchline here. Okay, so some folks wanted to help me out, but who pulls over and helps me out? I get in the car and they say, "Hey, we want to take you down to the area so you can have some phone reception and you can get to the area." to reach, connect with your party. I said, where are you all from? And they said, they're from Israel. I said, this is not the first time that Israelite has saved me, and it won't be the last time. It won't be the last time.
That's a great story.
I can't believe you had the presence of mind to make that fantastic joke. And then hours into fatigue.
You know what? I was so tired. I said, yeah, I'm a Christian. I'll tell you, I'm a pastor. I said, so anyway, there you go.
Wow.
I'll leave you with 2.
I don't know that we're saying that it's okay to hitchhike, but
this
was redeemed.
Yeah. It was redeemable. That's right.
Well, thank you again so much for being here, Francis. Thanks for joining the conversation.
Thank you, Jane.
Thank you so much. Such a joy.
We have an email address, podcast@csbc.com. Thanks for listening, everybody. Bye.